Hello everyone, my name is Einar Lönn, also work at the DNSCheck registry, and I'm also the project manager for DNSCheck. And I think we'll go into more detail about DNSCheck. So, before we dive into DNSCheck, we have to be on the same page about the word delegation. So simply, what does delegation mean? If you look at this picture, you can see a client's computer with a local resolver trying to get to the web page www.ias.se. So, what happens now? The client types into his browser www.ias.se, and this query goes to his local resolver or a recursive name server. This local resolver, now, this local resolver has just been restarted, so it knows nothing about anything, except one thing that has been precompiled into this resolver, and that is the IP addresses to the root name servers. So, what this name server does is to ask this exact same query. Give me the address for www.ias.se to the root servers. So this query goes to one of the IP addresses to the root servers, but when the root server receives this, it basically cannot answer because it has no clue. However, it does know about the last part of this query. It knows the IP addresses of the name servers that are authoritative for .se. And this is a delegation. So the answer that the name server receives from root is a delegation of basically a transfer of trust of the whole .se zone. So the answer is, I have no clue, but here's a list of IP addresses that are authoritative for .se. This answer comes to the name server, and since the name server has to come up with a recursive name server is basically a slave. It has to provide as good an answer it can. So it has to continue querying until it runs out of options. So what it does, since it's quite stupid, is to ask exactly the same query. What is the IP address of www.ias.se to one of the authoritative servers for .se. In this case, it's a.ns.se. a.ns.se has no clue, because the query is for www.ias.se, and that's not a part of the SE zone. However, ias.se is part of the SE zone, so the a.ns.se name server in turn delegates all authoritative for ias.se to a set of name servers. This also comes to the recursive name server, and the recursive name server still hasn't got the final answer, so it has to ask one more time. So now we come to the authoritative name servers for ias.se, and the recursive name server queries, give me the address for www.ias.se. And finally, since these are the real authoritative name servers, they can answer with an IP address to www.ias.se. This comes to the local resolver, and the local resolver answers back to the client the real IP address, and the client can connect. This looks like a very troublesome lookup, and it is. The good thing is that you only have to do it once, basically, because every level of these are cached in the server. So next time a query comes for something in the ias.se zone, the local resolver already knows almost everything about the zone. So this is much faster. So delegation is a transfer of trust. So then, what is DNSCheck and what does it do? I think basically that DNSCheck has two real big main functions. The first one is the obvious one. It's there to check the health of a delegation for a domain, and it's important to understand that it cannot actually dissect the zone and check different records in the zone. For example, it can check web servers, can check mail servers, stuff like that. It checks the delegation data only. The second part of what DNSCheck tries to do is it tries to educate users. It does this by performing tests, of course, and it tries to clarify any found problems with the zone. I'll show more about that later. So what distinguishes the new DNSCheck if you compare it to other zone checking tools? One really cool feature is that since we are the .se registry, we sit on the delegation history from February 2007. So we have this information in our DNSCheck database. So every time you test a .se zone that has been redelegated after this date, we also check the old name servers and see if they are still authoritative for the zone. And of course, I'll tell more about that. This is open source and stuff later, but this is an extremely simple function with a table that basically holds a name server and the domain. So if you want it for .com or anything, it's extremely easy to use. We clarify found warnings and errors. I'll talk more about that later. We also save history for tests done. So if you do a test today and you did a test like 1 year ago, you could always go back in time and compare these tests. There's an advanced tab for technicians, and basically this is part of the clarify errors thing, that the first view that you are met by when you go to the web page is extremely simple. It only shows what problems are there. But if you go to the advanced tab, you actually see what happened, what did I query, and stuff like that. It's built with a modular code structure, and this is extremely good because it makes it extremely easy for you to just take a single part. For example, if you want only the DNSSEC part of DNSCheck, you can take just this module and build into your systems. And the best part, it's open source, and it's also a BSD license, so you could actually use this for commercial products. Also, one cool thing, we allow tests of undelegated domains, and this is basically that we lie about the parent. So you could actually, before you buy a domain or before you redelegate a domain, you could perform a test with how you want all the delegation information to look like when you're done. So it's easy to explain that if you buy a new domain, it's of course, if you want to buy a new domain, of course it's not in the DNS, and you could actually test that everything works before you even buy the domain. That's a very cool feature. Also, one new feature is the post-check email. We also call this the 24-hour check. I'll go into more detail about that one. It's built for tomorrow. What I try to say here is that when we started building DNSCheck like 2 years ago, we made sure that for example, IPv6 features, we really wanted everything to work when we finally got IPv6 connectivity. So when it comes to requirements of the code, what it could do and stuff, we always thought that this has to be able to do everything over IPv6 only, over IPv6 also, and I can assure you that's a great bonus now, because we've had IPv6 for a month, 2 months, and everything has worked. It's like one option and everything works. So that was a very good thing. Also, of course, we are since we're on DNSSEC a lot, we also do a lot of tests of DNSSEC. One of the most common errors, it's one thing we can detect, and that's that when you enable DNSSEC on a zone and you sign the zone and you have, say, 3 name servers, and you forget to actually enable DNSCheck on one of these name servers. This is actually quite hard to notice, because the zone will be sent out to all three of them. It will be loaded on all three of them, but one out of 3 times DNSCheck breaks. And that's because one of the name servers hasn't enabled DNSCheck. And the DNSCheck actually tells you that this name server doesn't have DNSCheck enabled. So that it's very good to find the DNSCheck related errors also. And also we don't want people to use the old potentially weak MD5 crypto. How about development then? The first phase of the new DNSCheck with a new graphical user interface built by Pingdom was launched September 2008. And we've had a few releases after this, but now it's never totally complete, of course. But now we're happy to have a version 1.0, and yeah, since September 14th this year. So how about the various functions of DNSCheck? If we look at the 1.0, we have 4 major areas of application. First, we have the ordinary graphical user interface. You can find that at the URL there. Yeah, it's the first basic view. We have the undelegated graphical user interface. That's also available from the normal site. It's just another tab that says undelegated. Just click on that, and you can yeah, you will see what this change is. We have the post-check email, 24-hour check. We'll go into more detail there. And we have the back end of basically everything that DNSCheck does, and that's the command line interface. I'll show that briefly later on. It says here that I'm supposed to demo this, but it's not technically very compatible here, and also it's not so fun because this is a recorded session, so it's not really live. So I think you guys should head off to dnscheck.is.se and test it for yourselves. It's easy. So let's go into more detail about this 24-hour check. This function resulted from a request from Torbjörn Karlsson in the Regi project, and the objective was to automatically check and report the occurrence of delegation errors due to a change in the .se zone. And we do this by doing normal zone transfer from our distribution points, and then we compare the zones. So since we update the zone with 2-hour intervals, we take all the differences from the zone transfers and test everything that we seen have changed. So what really constitutes a change in the .se zone? For example, if a new domain is added, it's very easy to see in when comparing these zone transfers. If you change the glue, for example, you change the IP address to a name server, let's say an A change, or if it's an IPv6, it's a quad A change. If you add or remove name servers, that's NS changed. And if you start using DNSCheck and upload keys to us, that's a DS entry change. And of course, if you changing is the same as removing or adding, so you can do more than one of these at once. But that's extremely rare actually, because it's usually quite crazy to do that. So what happens to these tests in the 24-hour check? The tests, including errors, dates, everything, are saved to the DNSCheck database, and they use the domain name as a key for the test. Then at a predetermined time, preferably late in the day, because we don't want this function to run when there are a lot of changes in the .se zone, because that would be quite pointless. So at a set time, usually late in the day, when few changes occur, all domains with remaining errors in the past 24 hours are listed. And I hope you can read this because it's a bit hard to explain. But if a domain is changed several times, it's only always the last check that is counted for. So if a domain is broken, they fix it. It's broken, they fix it. Only the last run counts. And usually, since we do this at the time when few changes occur, almost all the problems are already solved at this late time. Then this list of domain is a huge list of the domain. It's then linked to all the registrar that subscribe to this service, and this list is almost always extremely short if it even exists. And then this is per registrar, so UB registrars only see the domains with problems that you are a registrar for. And this is an example of a post-check email. So this is a test registrar called Rekim SE. So it will say, dear registrar, the following X domains, how many had still had problems at the time when we ran this script. And you can see here that there's a domain called casinohelsinki.se. It has generated a test because the domain is new. That's in the parentheses. And it has found 2 errors, and that's superfluous name server listed as parent. And this this error is really quite bad, because with 2 superfluous name servers at parent, you could actually run into 2 timeouts before you have a chance to get at the zone. And that's really a poor user experience, because that's, I think, 60 seconds or something before you can load the page to the site. And the other one there, also a new domain, centiliterogram, has 4 errors and 1 critical. And critical is the highest level of error. There's always no chance that a domain with a critical error actually functions at all. And yeah, in this case, no name service found a child, so nothing answers about the zone, so the zone doesn't exist. Yeah, and also you see there up there says one attachment. This attachment is a YAML formatted attachment that goes into more detail about these errors with timestamps and everything. So it's more for if you want to machine parse these emails. The text, the body of the mail is more for reading. So what did the beta testers think about this service? We have had 10 of our largest registrars testing this 24-hour check for about a month, and after asking them, we received response from 5 of them, and I've summarized them here, but I've been focusing on changes. A lot of them said this is good, blah blah, but this is what they wanted changed. One of them wanted an option to change the time span, since we only do this once every day now. They were interested in having perhaps one summary per week or something, and that's very doable. I mean, yeah, we will look into it, because it's not really a problem for us to do it. Second one was an option to publish the data in the poll queue in the EPP. This is actually a bit harder, and also gives us some internal problems, perhaps. So we have to consider this one more closely before we can answer. Wait, sorry. More detailed error description. This one is actually already implemented because I totally agree. However, it's not in the live code now, but it will be in the live code in 2 months, 3 months perhaps. Can't give you an exact date, but the code exists, so it's it will be implemented, and it will be implemented like in we'll send a link to the test for each domain in these emails. And also 4 or 5 of those who responded were very positive to these emails. Although one was neutral because they didn't see a point, so they didn't actually use them in any way. So how can you registrars test these post-check emails? Well, it's quite simple because since the release in December 7th, you can just go to the registrar website and subscribe. And also since Monday the 21st of December, we also removed these old redelegated emails. And I think you will be glad about that. And it's a lot about this DNSCheck functionality, because it's more advanced. It does more things. And also, if you subscribe to these mails from DNSCheck, they will not consider this name service still authoritative as an error. So you won't get a mail for in the case that the old name service is still authoritative. And simply, this is a tool for error detection in any way, mostly for your customers, of course, but also it can find problems with your own domains or in your own systems. So I think I really think you should try it. What about the command line interface? The CLI tool for DNSCheck is extremely technical, but it's also a lot of fun. The normal output for a normal test is slightly more than 100 lines. The benefits of this is that, for example, you could use the raw flag. When you use this, you can see which modules generate which output. This is very good because then you see the chain. The chain of how the different modules call on each other. You can also use the debug flag, and with this you can receive so much output that you can find errors in basically anything. If you use the maximum debug, this is you write debug 3 times, then the output is so extensive that you explode a test from 180 lines to 5,327, and this is actual packet data, so you can see the different packets going back and forth. And how it looks. This is a normal test of IIS.se with the raw flag, and these are only the first 22 lines. And if you look at the data here, you can see that the zone module, that's the father of the other module, so to speak. It says that it's testing IIS.se with version 0.91. Then it instantly calls the first module. The first module is delegation, and it reports that it starts with the domain. The delegation module reports it finds these name servers as the parent, and also reports that it found these name servers as the child. Actually, it gives a warning because we actually have too few IPv6 name servers. We only have 1. Then checks glue and some other stuff. And it reports end at the if you scroll down like the 15th row or something, it says delegation end. So the delegation module has completed, and it generated 1 warning, as you saw there up there. Now, since this has ended, since this is a modular code base, it calls on the name server module, and it actually sends one of the name server that's received from the NS child. So the first one there, ns.nic.se, is sent to the name server module. the name server module tells that it begins with this value. It in turn calls on the host module, which begins on ns.nic.se, and so on. And these address modules also got the IP addresses from these glue functions in delegation. And finally goes to host end, blah blah, and then name server end, and it calls on name server again on the new name server, and so on. So it's a really logical chain. And if you consider this, then you also realize that you could only use one of these. It's very easy for me to only use the delegation module here, for example, to compare glues from the parent and child level. I would then install DNSCheck, and I would write DNSCheck minus test equal delegation, and then the domain. Then it does only the delegation part of these tests. And in this case, it would get one warning, too few IPv6 name servers. So, do you want to try more at home? The DNSCheck public GUI from us is available at dnscheck.is.se. And also, since it's open source, the repository is available on our open source site, opensource.is.se, which I really think you should seek out, because we have a lot of cool open source projects, and it's sad that almost no one knows about this open source webpage, because it's really one of our greatest, I think. So you should go there. And also the creators of the graphical user interface using DNSCheck, it's there, pingdom.se. And also address to the old DNSCheck is there, www.dnscheck.se. It's really good to, if you run a test on our DNSCheck and you find something that you think is wrong, for example, you could go to the old DNSCheck or ZoneCheck or some other delegation checking tool, run the same test and compare the data, because it's always possible that we have done something wrong or so. But if you get the same result from two utterly different zone checking tools, then probably the problem is on your side. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for listening.